Sometimes the hardest part of being human is waking up and realizing you feel stuck, not broken, not lost, just stuck. Like your life is on pause while the world keeps moving. You're doing what you're supposed to do, showing up where you can, but inside something feels heavy and unfinished. And the instinct is to judge yourself, to ask what's wrong with you. But feeling stuck isn't failure. It's a signal, a quiet invitation to pause, listen, and choose courage over self-judgment. Feeling stuck is one of the most misunderstood human experiences. We treat it like a flaw, like evidence that something has gone wrong, or that we've somehow failed to keep up with life. But being stuck is not a sign of weakness or lack of ambition. It's a signal that something inside you is asking to be noticed, not criticized. When you feel stuck, it often means you've been moving through life on autopilot, carrying expectations that no longer fit, saying yes when your body is saying no, or living according to rules that once protected you but no longer serve you. What makes feeling stuck so painful isn't the stillness itself. It's the shame we attach to it. We start telling ourselves stories that we should be further along, that others have it figured out, that if we were stronger or smarter, we wouldn't be here. And those stories disconnect us from curiosity, from compassion, from the very insight the stuckness is trying to offer. Because stuckness is not the absence of movement. It's often the presence of deep internal transition. Something is shifting beneath the surface and it needs space. There's a reason this feeling often shows up after periods of responsibility, survival, or relentless pushing forward. When you've been strong for a long time, your system eventually asks for honesty. It asks you to slow down and check in. Are you living in alignment with what matters to you now? Are you honoring your limits? Are you listening to your own needs or just managing everyone else's expectations? Feeling stuck is the moment where those questions get louder. The temptation is to immediately try to fix it, to force motivation, to chase clarity, to overhaul your life overnight. But signals aren't meant to be silenced. They're meant to be understood. When you pause long enough to listen, you may realize that what feels like being stuck is actually your inner wisdom drawing a boundary. It's saying, I can't keep doing this the same way. And that realization, while uncomfortable, is deeply courageous. We don't talk enough about how bravery shows up quietly. It shows up in the willingness to admit that something isn't working. It shows up in the choice to be honest with yourself, even when you don't yet know what comes next. Feeling stuck is often the first moment of that honesty. It's the moment you stop pretending that endurance alone is a strategy for a meaningful life. Instead of asking, what's wrong with me? A more powerful question is, what is this feeling trying to teach me? Maybe it's teaching you that you've outgrown a role. Maybe it's pointing to exhaustion that needs rest, not discipline. Maybe it's inviting you to grieve a version of life you thought you'd have so you can make space for the one that's actually possible now. These lessons don't arrive loudly. They arrive as discomfort, restlessness, and longing. When you treat stuckness as a signal, you shift from self-judgment to self-trust. You begin to believe that your inner experience has value even when it's inconvenient. And that belief is foundational. You cannot create change from a place of constant self-criticism. Growth requires safety. It requires the sense that you're allowed to pause, to reflect, to feel uncertain without being punished for it. Being stuck doesn't mean you're behind. It means you're paying attention. It means some part of you is refusing to settle for a life that no longer fits. And that refusal, gentle or loud, is an act of integrity. When you honor it, you open the door to movement that's aligned instead of forced, intentional instead of reactive. So if you feel stuck, don't rush past it. Sit with it. Get curious about it. Let it tell you what it needs. Because on the other side of stuckness is not failure. It's clarity that's earned through courage. And that kind of clarity doesn't just move you forward. It moves you closer to yourself. Clarity comes from courage, not certainty. And understanding this is one of the most liberating truths for anyone feeling stuck in life. We often wait for the perfect moment, the perfect plan, or the perfect feeling to take action. We believe that before we can move forward, we must have everything figured out. But the reality is that clarity rarely precedes action. It is forged in the fire of courage. You don't need to know the entire path before taking the first step. You only need to be willing to start, to step into the unknown, and to face the discomfort of uncertainty with openness and honesty. When you feel stuck, it's natural to seek certainty because it feels safe. Uncertainty is uncomfortable. It challenges your sense of control and forces you to confront vulnerability. But life does not give us control over everything, and waiting for perfect clarity often becomes a form of paralysis. Courage, in contrast, asks you to embrace the unknown, to acknowledge your fear, and to act despite it. It is the willingness to move forward with imperfect knowledge, trusting that each step will illuminate the path ahead. Courage manifests in many small ways, often quietly. It's in the decision to wake up and face the day when all you want to do is hide under the covers. It's in the choice to speak your truth when silence would be easier. It's in showing up for yourself with intention, even if the outcome is uncertain. Each of these moments, seemingly minor, compounds into significant momentum that gradually dissolves the feeling of being stuck, not because the situation has changed overnight, but because you have changed internally. The relationship between courage and clarity is dynamic. Courage allows you to take steps, and each step brings more information, insight, and self-awareness. Clarity is not a static point. It emerges as you act, reflect, and adjust. When you start moving, even in small ways, you begin to see patterns, notice opportunities, and recognize possibilities that were invisible when you were immobilized by fear or indecision. Courage, therefore, is not a one-time act. It is a practice. It is choosing to engage with your life fully day after day, even when the next step is not perfectly defined. Most people underestimate the power of imperfect action. We assume that if we cannot do something flawlessly, it is not worth attempting. But this mindset only reinforces stagnation. Courage, on the other hand, values effort over perfection. It recognizes that growth comes from the willingness to experiment, to learn from mistakes, and to iterate. Each attempt, whether successful or not, builds experience, self-trust, and confidence. Over time, these small acts of bravery compound into profound transformation. Another essential aspect of courage is vulnerability. Feeling stuck often involves hiding from difficult truths about ourselves, our desires, or our circumstances. It is uncomfortable to face what is not working or to acknowledge dissatisfaction. Courage allows you to sit with that discomfort without judgment. It invites you to confront your fears, to explore your feelings honestly, and to engage with your life authentically. Vulnerability is not weakness. It is the doorway to clarity. When you allow yourself to feel, reflect, and respond with openness, you create the conditions for meaningful progress. Courage also reshapes your internal narrative. When you act despite uncertainty, you rewrite the story you tell yourself about who you are. You begin to see yourself not as someone paralyzed by fear or indecision, but as someone capable of facing challenges and moving forward. Each courageous choice reinforces a new identity, one rooted in resilience, honesty, and self-trust. That identity becomes the foundation upon which you can build a life of purpose and direction. Finally, clarity achieved through courage is sustainable. It is not based on external conditions or temporary motivation, but on the steady accumulation of intentional actions and reflective insight. By embracing courage as your compass, you allow yourself to navigate uncertainty with confidence, knowing that each step, no matter how small, brings you closer to understanding, progress, and alignment with your authentic self. Small, brave actions rebuild momentum when motivation feels distant, and understanding this principle is crucial for anyone who feels stuck in life. We often overestimate the power of motivation, assuming that if we just feel inspired, enough change will happen naturally. But the truth is, motivation is fleeting. It comes and goes like the weather, and waiting for it to arrive before acting often leads to prolonged stagnation. Momentum, on the other hand, is cultivated through repeated, deliberate action even when motivation is low. It is built one small, intentional step at a time, and these steps, compounded over days, gradually create movement that feels unstoppable. When motivation is absent, the temptation is to wait, to procrastinate, or to give up entirely. But small actions, no matter how seemingly insignificant, counteract that inertia. making your bed, writing a single sentence, taking a short walk, or simply committing to a 10-minute reflection. These micro actions are far more powerful than we often realize. Each one sends a signal to your brain and your nervous system that you are willing to engage with life, even when it feels difficult. These small choices accumulate into momentum, and momentum is what propels you forward when inspiration is absent. Courage is intimately tied to these small actions. It takes bravery to act without the guarantee of immediate results or the reassurance of strong feelings. Courage allows you to move forward even when the path is unclear, or when your confidence wavers, or when the weight of past failures lingers. Each tiny act of courage strengthens your internal sense of agency. Over time, the accumulation of these acts produces a force far greater than any single burst of motivation could achieve. It builds trust in yourself, showing that you are capable of following through, even when the circumstances feel challenging or uncertain. The beauty of small, brave actions is that they create a feedback loop. One action leads to another, and each one reinforces the belief that progress is possible. When you write down one idea, it often sparks a second. When you take a short walk, it can lead to deeper reflection or a new decision. When you commit to a brief moment of focus, it opens the door to additional productivity. These micro actions are not isolated, they compound, creating a rhythm of forward movement that gradually transforms the sense of being stuck into a sense of possibility and agency. It is also important to recognize that small actions provide clarity in addition to momentum. When we act, we learn. Each step gives us information about what works, of what feels aligned, and what we truly desire. Waiting for motivation often leads to overthinking and self-doubt, whereas action illuminates the path forward. Even imperfect action is instructive. Each attempt, whether it succeeds or falls short, teaches you something valuable about your strengths, your limits, and the adjustments you need to make. This knowledge is the fuel that makes subsequent actions more effective and intentional. When motivation feels distant, small actions are an act of self-compassion. They honor the desire to change while acknowledging your current state. You do not have to leap into radical transformation overnight. You only need to take the next manageable step. These micro actions respect your energy, your pace, and your humanity, which reduces the likelihood of burnout and discouragement. Momentum created this way is sustainable because it is built on kindness and consistency rather than pressure and unrealistic expectations. Finally, small, brave actions cultivate confidence. Each completed task, however minor it seems, is evidence that you are capable. You start to see yourself as someone who can move forward, who can follow through, and who can navigate uncertainty with resilience. That self-perception is crucial for lasting transformation. Motivation may ebb and flow, but the confidence generated by repeated action endures. Over time, these consistent, small steps compound into profound change, shifting your experience from feeling stuck to feeling empowered, alive, and in motion. Self-compassion is the bridge out of stagnation, and it is one of the most powerful tools we have when we feel stuck in life. Often, we respond to our own struggles with criticism, judgment, or frustration, believing that tough self-talk will motivate us to act. But in reality, harshness rarely inspires change. It only deepens the feeling of being trapped, fuels self-doubt, and drains the emotional energy required to take even the smallest step forward. Self-compassion, in contrast, allows us to acknowledge our current state without judgment, to recognize our humanity, and to create the internal safety needed for growth. Feeling stuck often comes with a narrative we tell ourselves, "I should be further along, I've wasted time," or "I'm not capable." These statements are not just unhelpful, they are damaging. They amplify shame and fear, which are paralyzing emotions. Self-compassion interrupts this cycle. It asks you to speak to yourself the way you would speak to a close friend, with patience, understanding, and encouragement. It transforms the internal dialogue from a source of pressure to a source of support, and that shift alone can create enough space for movement to occur. The process of self-compassion begins with awareness. You must first notice the thoughts and feelings that arise when you feel stuck. What stories are you telling yourself? How do those stories make you feel? Once you become aware of them, you can choose a more supportive response. This might look like gently reminding yourself that it is okay not to have all the answers yet, or giving yourself credit for the steps you have already taken. No matter how small, awareness paired with kindness is a powerful combination that softens resistance and opens the door to action. Self-compassion also changes how we approach failure and setbacks. When we are harsh with ourselves, mistakes are magnified and often lead to avoidance or withdrawal. When we are compassionate, mistakes are reframed as learning opportunities, not reflections of our worth. Each misstep becomes a signal guiding us toward better decisions rather than a reason to quit. This approach fosters resilience and encourages persistence, even in the face of difficulty or uncertainty. It teaches us that progress is not about perfection, but about consistency and courage. Moreover, self-compassion enhances our capacity for clarity. When the mind is filled with criticism and self-judgment, it becomes clouded and unfocused. The weight of shame and pressure obscures possibilities and narrows our perspective. Compassion, however, clears the fog. By treating yourself kindly, you create mental and emotional space to observe your circumstances more objectively, to consider your options with curiosity rather than fear, and to take steps that are aligned with your values and long-term goals. Compassion is not a weakness, it is a lens that reveals solutions that harshness often hides. Another essential aspect of self-compassion is its ability to sustain momentum. When you acknowledge your efforts and treat yourself with care, you cultivate internal motivation that does not depend on external validation. You begin to act because you want to honor yourself, not because you feel pressured or inadequate. This intrinsic motivation is more reliable and enduring than fleeting bursts of inspiration or guilt-driven action. Small, compassionate choices compound over time, creating lasting change that feels authentic and attainable. Self-compassion also nurtures patience. Feeling stuck can make us restless, impatient, or frustrated with our perceived lack of progress. Compassion allows us to slow down without giving up. It reminds us that transformation is a process and that meaningful change is rarely immediate. By meeting ourselves with kindness in the moments we feel stuck, we cultivate endurance and resilience, and we reinforce the belief that we are capable of navigating uncertainty and growing through challenge. Finally, self-compassion strengthens the relationship we have with ourselves. When we act with kindness, understanding, and encouragement toward ourselves, we build trust. We begin to believe that we can rely on our own support even in difficult times. This trust becomes the foundation for courageous action, sustained momentum, and a sense of agency in life. In essence, self-compassion transforms stuckness from a trap into a teacher, of showing us that the way forward is not through pressure or perfection, but through gentle, consistent care for the person we are becoming. Every morning is an invitation to choose yourself again, and embracing this truth is one of the most powerful ways to move out of feeling stuck. We often wait for extraordinary circumstances, a surge of motivation, a perfect plan, or the right external conditions to finally take action. But the reality is that transformation begins in the ordinary moments, in the simple choice to show up for yourself each day. Each morning is a fresh page, a chance to reconnect with your intentions, to reaffirm your values, and to take a step, however small, toward becoming the person you want to be. Choosing yourself in the morning does not require grand gestures or dramatic declarations. It can be as simple as setting an intention before your feet touch the floor, taking a moment to breathe and reflect, or committing to one deliberate action that aligns with your growth. These small acts are profound because they signal to your mind and body that your priorities matter. Each morning choice, no matter how minor it seems, reinforces your sense of agency and self-worth. Over time, these repeated actions accumulate into a powerful momentum that quietly reshapes your identity. When you make the choice to honor yourself each morning, you are practicing self-trust. You are showing yourself that you can rely on your own commitment, that you can create consistency even when circumstances are unpredictable. This daily practice of choosing yourself builds an internal foundation that does not depend on external validation or fleeting inspiration. It creates stability and confidence that persist, allowing you to navigate challenges with resilience and clarity. In essence, each morning becomes a rehearsal for courage and intentional living. Many people underestimate the cumulative effect of these small, consistent actions. We tend to focus on dramatic breakthroughs or radical transformations, believing that change only matters if it is immediately noticeable. But real, lasting change is rarely instantaneous. It is built incrementally day by day through repeated acts of presence, honesty, and alignment with our values. By choosing yourself each morning, you engage in a quiet but potent form of transformation, one that gradually reshapes not just your day, but your entire life trajectory. Morning choices also cultivate emotional resilience. Starting the day with intention and self-care equips you to respond to challenges rather than react to them. It allows you to set boundaries, prioritize what truly matters, and approach the world from a place of groundedness rather than scarcity or fear. Even when external circumstances are chaotic or demanding, the inner consistency created by these daily choices provides a stable anchor. This stability is a form of empowerment, reinforcing that your life is not solely dictated by external events, but by the decisions you make within them. Choosing yourself in the morning is also an act of courage because it often goes against ingrained patterns of self-neglect or overextension. Many of us have been conditioned to prioritize others, to push ourselves relentlessly, or to defer our needs in the name of responsibility. Reclaiming your mornings requires conscious defiance of these patterns. It requires acknowledging that your growth, well-being, and clarity are legitimate priorities. By consistently doing so, you begin to shift not only your routines, but your internal narrative about who you are and what you deserve. Finally, the practice of choosing yourself each morning strengthens your relationship with time. Mornings become a sacred window to set the tone for the day, to make intentional choices before the noise of obligations, distractions, and pressures takes over. Each day becomes an opportunity to reinforce habits, align actions with goals, and honor your authentic self. Over time, these repeated morning choices build a life characterized by intentionality, confidence, and self-respect. They transform the feeling of being stuck into a daily practice of agency, showing that progress is not about speed or perfection, but about consistently choosing yourself one morning at a time.